Having an addiction, I don't believe, starts off as an addiction. I think it starts off as trying to fulfill some kind of a need, to feel better, to not feel at all, to be accepted, find some way to escape the pain you're experiencing. You start doing that on a regular basis, and guess what? You train your brain.
Partner betrayal is disorienting, heartbreaking, and results in absolute confusion for the betrayed partner. You worry that nothing in your life was real, and you fear that you will never be able to trust your spouse or yourself again. Well, welcome to the Rebuilding Trust podcast with Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, aka Carol the Coach, and what I can promise is that when you listen to my podcast, you'll begin to believe that there is hope. We will be hearing from experts all over the world who specialize in problematic sexual behavior, sex addiction, and infidelity. Together, we will be asking them the hard questions about how you both can rebuild safety, find strengths, grieve and mourn what you had, what you never had, and what you fear you will never find again. The truth is that rebuilding trust is possible, and I am going to show you the steps to working together to build a whole new marriage based on the honesty, authenticity, and transparency that your marriage deserves. Rebuilding Trust with Carol the Coach.
Thom Bianco, I am so excited to have you on the show because I met you through our good friend Heidi Kinsella, and you have been working with them, working hard to help sex addicts and family members get healthy. And you told me that you wrote this article called The Muddied Self. And Thom is a coach, and he has dedicated his life to sex addicts. Now, are you in a private practice now, or are you on your own?
No, I'm in a private practice. I was working with Heidi, and we decided that for me being in a private practice would be a better way to go about this. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay, and so Thom is a master's. He's a certified counselor. He's a life coach and a professional coach. And when I read his The Muddied Self, I thought he did such a great job of writing about what it takes if you're a sex addict, or even if you're a betrayed partner, to reassess your life and decide what needs to change. And so, Thom, would you share a little bit about the Muddied Self article itself and what that article encourages people to do? And then I've got some specific questions for you.
Okay. Well, as we go through life, we learn a lot of different things about how to show up in life, how to behave in life, how to speak in life, even how to think in life. And it comes from all kinds of sources, some of them reliable, some of them not. But when you're growing up, you're kind of in a position to want to be safe and secure and accepted. So your caretakers, teachers in school, if you're involved with a religion, maybe even the pastors or deacons, whatever religion you're involved with, begin to start telling you how to live your life. And as a little kid, what do you know? You're trying to stay safe and secure, so you do it. And then life continues. And then we even get influenced by more things. Interestingly enough, marketing and TV has a big influence on it, in my opinion. And drives and ambitions start going in a particular direction. And for the most cases, a person gets involved and, does a fairly good job in moving in the direction of materialistic life, gathering things and stuff, making a career, becoming successful in those terms. And, and that's great. I'm not saying that it's not. But the difficulty is there's not too much done to develop the spiritual self. And that's a scary word because I'm not talking about anything hocus pocus. I'm simply talking about the little voice in yourself that is truly you and how it has become buried. That's why the article is called The Muddy Self. And it has become buried and really isn't very strong enough to steer your life. So, in essence, I'm going to say that even though you're very successful in life, that is not who you are.
Right.
That is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Who you are is that little voice that's trying to gain hold and become in control and direct you.
And it's interesting that you say that because that little voice is probably your intuition, and that intuition comes directly from your spiritual connection. And yet, your spiritual connection can be muddied if you have people telling you what you have to do and what you shouldn't do. And then you start feeling guilty, or you start thinking about being a sinner, and then you feel shame. And it really does get muddied, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that, that's not to say that you as a young person did not start off in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But as you started accumulating and having your own emotions and your own feelings and your own thoughts, they may not have been pretty well accepted
Mm-hmm.
by the environment you live in. So you got scolded, or you were told not to do that, or that isn't a good thing. And again, for the sake of feeling safe and secure, you pay attention and you do it. And that's the beginning of your true self being buried and not expressing itself in the way you are. It begins to express itself in the way the world wants you to.
Well, and you and I are both coaches, and in our coaching school, they talk about having a gremlin inside of you that keeps reminding you that you're not good enough exactly as you are. And those messages come from the outside world, whether somebody's been bullied, as your article shows, or you've been neglected. I'm thinking about Patrick Carnes, and he said that worse than abuse, and for our listening audience, Patrick Carnes started the whole SAA-recovery.org movement. He said that most parents, they didn't mean to be, but they were neglectful, and they didn't emphasize the positive qualities in each of us that we could learn how to grow and develop. And so you've asked in this paper to really kind of lose whatever you thought you knew and recreate a new sense of self based on, gosh, a series of questions in the Muddied Self. And really, you ask for a lot of self reflection. I believe you said that certainly you get asked a lot, why do I do the things I do? And what do you tell them when they ask such a profound question like, why do I have this addiction? Why did he do this to me? What do you say?
Yeah. Um, having having an addiction, I don't believe starts off as an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I think it starts off as trying to fulfill some kind of a need to feel better, to not feel at all,
Yeah, to
to
numb.
be to be accepted,
Mm-hmm.
to find some way to escape the pain you're experiencing, to start to feel like more joy, more pleasure than you think you are in comparison to other people. And then you start doing that on a regular basis, and guess what? You train your brain.
Hmm.
And
No, I
when
absolutely
you're,
agree with you. You train
yeah,
your brain to need that kind of numbing or that kind of excitement. And then a truism about addiction is once you feel good, you look for a greater high, either more numbing or more dopamine or more stimulation. And that also develops that addiction.
yeah, and even though the brain is certainly a powerful thing in the human body, and most people believe that their brain directs their life, and hopefully we'll talk about that difference. It comes down to the tail wagging the dog.
Uh-huh.
And
Hmm.
again, the real you, who you are, that little voice inside gets really buried and gets overpowered by the power of your brain.
Hmm.
And that brain, which has been trained, and I'll use the word dysfunctional, has been trained in a dysfunctional way, is now addicted to that dysfunctional way. And off you go, whether you like it or not.
Hmm. Again, the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, the tail wagging the dog.
So then, of course, the $1,000,000 question is how can I stop having this tail wag the dog? How can I stop my addiction? How can I stop my dysfunctional life? What do you tell them?
Yeah. Okay, well, that is a three-part issue.
Hmm.
And it begins with realizing that you actually have the power to change your life. And you may not feel that, you may not believe it, but all you have to do is think you do and have the will to start doing it. Then it becomes an issue of introspection. What's going on inside of me? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? What do I really want? What am I willing to do to get what I really want? And just discovering yourself that way. And then taking a look at what you discovered in comparison to the difficult life that you're living at this point, and you work to what I call disidentification. You begin to no longer identify with that stuff as who you are, but realizing that that's just how you show up in life. Who you are is that crystal clear water that was in the glass when you were born. And that water is still there. It didn't go away. It just muddied. And starting to take the mud out, a grain at a time, a teaspoon at a time, a rock at a time, starts bringing the clarity back.
Well, and so doesn't that require what you refer to as a psychic change?
Totally, yes. The word psychic change is kind of like puts it all under an umbrella.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
this
that
is a psychic change is definitely needed beyond the behavioral changes that you learn how to do. Those are important. In most cases, you have to do them first. But the psychic change is the stuff you don't see that's going on inside of you.
Yeah, so with all this introspection and reflection and really getting clear, like the water, in terms of what you want, then you have to actually develop that desire to do what it takes to become clear, to become the person you want to be, a man of integrity, a woman of good self-esteem. And so I know you do a lot of talking about surrendering. And Boy, sometimes I use that word surrender in my counseling because I think it's so positive. It's really an acceptance of something. And it feels like I'm not going to surrender. I'm not going to lose control. But really, Thom, you believe you have to surrender as part of the process, don't you?
Well, that is a very interesting question because I don't think of it in terms of surrendering.
Ah,
I think of it in terms of no longer identifying with the parts of life that are causing you your difficulties and let them go and realize that the who you are showing up as is different than the who you are. And now start using the who you are to reinvent your life. So it's not, to me, it's not a matter of surrendering, it's a matter of
okay.
rediscovering yourself. And that's where the psychic change comes into play. And using that self to move your life in a better direction, realizing that that's where your power is at.
Mhm.
And, like in 12-step programs, which I believe are actually very wonderful. The 12 steps take in a lot of different psychology and philosophy and things of that nature. But, anyways, they talk about turning your will and life over to a power greater than yourself. And that scares a lot of people too,
Mhm.
until you begin to realize that that power greater than yourself is really the power inside of you that allows you to change the way you show up in life.
And
And
I
that's,
still
and
have to maintain that power inside of you um, is, as I called earlier, a conduit to your spirituality, to your greater sense of self. It's more than the ego, isn't it, Thom?
oh yeah, way more than an eagle. Ego,
Hmm.
not an eagle. But think of it this way:
Okay.
you're walking through life as a great big antenna, like a TV antenna,
Uh huh.
and you're picking up all kinds of signals.
Hmm.
Your body's getting you're feeling things, you're thinking things, but you're also getting signals from a higher power. Those are the signals that are the clear water of you. And it's a matter now of being able to separate them and start paying attention to the signals that are coming to you from this higher power. And
Oh, I
and
love
it,
that.
it yeah, it doesn't have to be God. It could be. I'm not saying it's not, but there are signals coming to you, just like when you were a little kid, and all of a sudden you had this feeling or your thought. That was you. That was the real you.
Hmm.
But you weren't allowed to have a healthy interpretation of it or a healthy expression of it. So you started learning how to show up in a difficult way. So taking the mud out of the water so you can bring the water into uh, uh, a clear aspect again is the psychic change. And it requires listening to the information from the higher power that is now inside of you, allowing you to bring back yourself to direct your life and show up in life in a new way.
Well, and it's so interesting that you are talking about this because I had a psychologist who was the founder of our coaching group, IPEC, and he wrote a book about the seven stages of leadership. And stages 6 and 7 are really when it's crystal clear that you can listen to yourself, be at peace with that, like yourself for it, and then It's a mindfulness term. He called it equanimity. He says, you'll have an equanimous relationship with yourself, which really means you get how you need to be, you like how you show up, and you usually want to help people as a result. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's right on. I explain it in a different way, but we're all trying to get to the home plate.
Tom talks in metaphors, and my favorite guru ever therapeutically was Milton Erickson. And he was this doctor who had polio, and he was in a wheelchair forever. He was a psychiatrist. And he said, if you speak to people in metaphors, and this is a coaching principle, they will internalize it the way they need to get healthy. And that's what your paper is all about. It's just an amazing paper. And, now you've talked about the metaphor of being a clear glass of water when you're born, and then having it muddied by all the hard experiences, the critical people, the choices you make that further muddy the water, like drinking and sex and gambling and overeating or undereating, all that stuff. And then you just talked about the baseball situation. You are a guy that thinks in metaphors, don't you?
Well, I never noticed that.
Well, just know it helps people.
Yeah, you're right. It simplifies situations, and I like what you said about people being able to internalize that and define it in the way that's best for them, because that's beginning to touch their spirit and beginning to awaken how they interpret life.
Yeah, so now I kind of diverted this. And so let me just go back. The healing recovery process is really 4 areas. And the first one is, how do I accomplish a psychic change? Is that correct? And then you said you don't really believe in surrendering, but I believe that I read that you have to identify, are you willing to lose who you were to take on a whole new sense of self? Is that correct?
Yeah, except I don't think I said I don't believe in surrendering. I like to address it in a different way, because surrendering is disempowering to a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
And it means like waving the white flag. There's another metaphor. It's like waving the white flag and letting the enemy take you over. So the word surrendering, I do the best I can to stay away from it. So even though it is an act of surrendering, I don't think that is a helpful word to use in helping a person trying to get through this difficult beginning so that they can move through the process of a psychic change.
Okay, and then you say something else that I really believe in, and I stress with most of my clients, both addicts as well as partners. I talk to them about staying in the moment. And Bessel van der Kolk, the guru, I'm going to talk gurus today, of trauma, said we as therapists and coaches have to help people get out of the past, because they'll never lose their trauma if they stay in the past. They have to be in the present. And you really feel that being in the present is a crucial step to developing that new, clearer sense of self.
Well, yes, actually, life only takes place in the present. Mm-hmm. The past is a memory. And again, that's when the brain is the tail's wagging the dog. Mm-hmm. And it brings back the old behaviors, the old interpretations of life, and it muddies up the present moment. And if you project into the future, you're projecting into the future with the limited dysfunctional knowledge you have.
Mm-hmm.
So how the heck can you start building a wonderful future for yourself, even though you have a dream? The first step to that dream is based upon what you learned in your past. So the present moment is the only place that life takes place. And if I grasp that present moment, I can now begin to learn how to redefine my life and start gathering new knowledge and new understanding. So as I make that first step forward, it is based upon the clarity that I got from this moment.
Yeah. And this is why, listening audience, I had Thom on. Because when I read his article, I realized he is, when he talks about the tail wagging the dog, another metaphor, he's really saying that you get to choose. You get to choose to let go of the past. You get to choose how to develop new neurocircuitry that helps you to feel better. But it is a choice. And I really feel, Thom, that people almost need at least a great support team, if not a committee of like-minded people to help them stop their distorted thinking, help them stop the dysfunctions, stay in the moment. And you said, develop a whole new will, right? Will you tell us a little bit more about what is a will and how does it fit in this process?
Sure. The will basically is the strength and power, the ammunition and the guns that support and defend your true self from all of the I got to think of another word. I don't want to say the word I'm thinking of.
Come
From
on, you can say anything.
all of the junk and harmful stuff that's coming your way. The will
Got it.
is the gate that keeps that out. So discovering it and then strengthening it allows the change that you learned about in this present moment to start taking place. Because if you have all of these changes and they take place, but yet your will is weak,
Mm-hmm.
you won't be able to make that change. So again, if you resort to the 12-step programs, the third step says turn your will over to that higher power. So now, instead of listening to all the dysfunctional things you accumulated in life, you now begin to listen to the voice that is coming from the little bit of clarity that is now showing up in your glass that is inspired by this power greater than yourself, whatever you think that is.
Mm-hmm. And I
Could
heard
be
you
a
say that
self-help book.
could be, yeah, that could be the group, that could be God, that could be that knowing inside of yourself that you're really taking charge of your life and you're creating something that is not dysfunctional. So I love that process. And I love the fact that, you're a counselor and a coach. So am I. It is our mission to get people to love themselves again. But that is a slow process. And it starts taking out one bit of sand or one bit of pebble at a time, right?
Yes.
All right. I am talking to Thom Bianco. He's got an email, tbj7coaching@gmail.com. If you want more information from Thom, if you want to find out more about this process, you're taking clients, right, Thom?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because he's in private practice now and not working for anybody, I will say that you light up when you talk about this process, and it's coaching, it's mindfulness, It's 12 step. I mean, you've really collaborated a lot of theory and wisdom into the program. Mm-hmm.
Well, just to say a couple of things, I don't know how much time we have left, but life is a lot more than one form of counseling or therapeutic methodology. Life is a lot more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a one size fits all. It's a rediscovering of yourself by getting as much clarity, as much clear water as you possibly can. So when you finally discover and you realize that, my life's not going in the right way and it's important for me to change, the first thing you do is you take that glass and you set it on the shelf. And a lot of people do that by going to a 30, 60, 90-day program, going to doing 90 meetings in 90 days. That glass is sitting on the shelf. And now what happens is that junk gets to settle. And now you have a little bit of clarity showing up the top of the glass. That's what's important to grab onto and begin to understand. Mm-hmm. And start redefining yourself based upon that. And you mentioned having groups and supports. Extremely important. Because this is like jumping out of an airplane. If you don't pull the ripcord, it's not going to be a very soft landing. You're free falling. Mm-hmm. So the ripcord is there. So when you pull it, you've got a parachute that comes on and eases your fall. That's what the group is all about. Because in the beginning, there's going to be a void when you are trying to match how you show up with who you are, and it could get a little bit uncomfortable. Could be a little bit scary. It's like learning how to move a 500-pound weight. You can't do it all at once. You got to build up to the point, and you may never be able to lift a 500-pound weight, but you can probably get to 250 or 350, and that ain't all bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good point. It's developing that muscle, regardless of how much weight you can lift.
Yeah.
And so, how would you like them to contact you if we have listening audience that wants to maybe set up an appointment with you? Do you want that through email or do you want that through your phone number?
Email is best because I've gotten into a habit of kind of leaving my phone behind because I don't want to be addicted to it.
Smart thinking. Okay.
So
let that be a lesson to all of us.
Yeah. I get the emails, I see them in the morning, I see them in the afternoon. And if needed, we can contact by phone, but we can establish that after an email.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thom, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I really feel like it's great wisdom. Did I hear you say that you are going to be creating a website?
I did, actually. It's done.
Oh, good. Give them your website.
Okay. It is tbc-c.com.
Okay. And if you would send that to me by email, I'll make sure we have that in the notes, because I hope that you have a place for the Muddied Self as a resource on your website. And of course, you can use this podcast to help people, to motivate them to begin to change that self. I had this picture when you said, okay, once that water settles, there is clarity on the top. And I thought, well, what do? Do you pour that glass of clarity, of clear water, into another glass and kind of start over with positive self-talk? Nope. Okay. What do you do as we end for today? What do you advise?
Okay. The analogy says that you are that glass of water. So pouring it into something else is like getting rid of yourself and not a good idea.
Okay.
So clearing out the junk, a grain at a time, a spoonful at a time, you are re-exposing the true you inside this body, inside this brain. inside this world. You are finding a new way to show up, and you are re-exposing the being you were when you were born, the being that you probably are supposed to be anyways.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. I said it before, very wise. I'm sure you're a heck of a sponsor. And I hope our listening audience will think about men that really, really need and desire change, psychic change, and they'll think of you. Thank you, Thom.
Oh, my pleasure. Appreciate you inviting me, so you're welcome.